if the estimator doesn't have some metrics to work with or some numbers to work with, he's just throwing a dart at the board to say, "Oh, well, this is going to take 50 hours or 20 hours or 10 hours." And I know there's a lot of estimators out there that have been doing it for years, and they can walk into something, especially on the residential side. They can walk into a residence and they can say, "That room, that's a 10-hour room. This is a 6-hour room. This is and they're probably pretty accurate because they've been doing it for so long. But if you're just getting into that type of thing, or if you're a new company, you have to build up some metrics. Otherwise, and if you ever hope to like have other people that could actually do estimates for you, you have to have a system of metrics in place for them to do it. And
Well, that's what I was gonna say on that. Like, it
yeah,
is not a scalable
no,
process if the secret
dude,
sauce is in your head. If you're estimating by look and feel and
yeah,
assumption,
yeah,
that's not, you can't teach someone else that.
nope, nope, not in less than 10 years.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
What's up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and y'all are listening to the Painting Growth Podcast on this beautiful April day. And I am joined today by our repeat friend of the podcast, Mr. Tom Droste, founder and I think CEO of Estimate Rocket. What's up,
Many
Tom? Good to have
hats,
you back.
many hats.
Many hats.
uh, Doing great. Busy. It's as in the same way that all of our customers get busy at this time of year when the buds start coming out on the trees and all that good stuff. We get busy because they are, all the seasonal workers are coming back online. There's just a huge amount of activity at this time of year. It's great,
Yeah, it's a
exciting.
busy time of year for everyone.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So I actually reached out to you because I wanted to have this discussion with you, and it's going to be a very targeted discussion regarding some really cool features. So Estimate Rocket it's like a CRM, and you do that's kind of, I think, what, like, the outward marketing thing. Most people sees Estimate Rocket, they think, oh, estimating
yeah,
CRM, but
yeah,
also there's like a whole like bookkeeping function, connection with QuickBooks, which is really cool. And the thing that I
yeah.
wanted to dig into was actually employee tracking, hourly tracking, and geotagging.
Sure. Yeah, I think the important additional thing to put in there is project management tool, because we're really designed to help service contractors, very specifically service contractors, move their projects to end, from the sales cycle through the whole work phase and then into the billing and reporting. And so that's where the geo tracking and time tracking come in. Interestingly, in a previous company, we wrote a time and attendance system for supermarkets, and it's really pretty complex stuff. I mean, I'm sure everybody thinks they have scheduling woes, but picture your 15-lane supermarket trying to get enough people there all the time, but not too many people there all the time, because otherwise, you're paying people to not do anything. Anyway, so time tracking, near and dear.
Yeah, I mean, little caveat, I don't intend this, and I like, for the listeners, it's not going to
Sure,
be just a 30-minute sales pitch for Estimate
sure.
Rocket. It's like,
No,
if
no,
you
I
like
get
the features, you go find them elsewhere if you want, but Estimate Rocket
sure.
obviously does them.
Right. Yeah.
Just so getting that out there, because
No,
no
no,
one likes
I'm
to
good.
listen to a sales pitch.
Yeah, no, no, I'm good with that.
So, walk me through, like, your development process. So, or actually, not even the development process.
Mhm.
What's the user interface and kind of the outcome that someone will get by using your employee hourly tracking and geo tracking? How does that work? Walk me through it.
Sure. So it's time tracking has to be simple, because typically the people that are responsible for tracking their time are not heavy tech users. So it obviously has to be very functionally designed to make it easy for them to get in, log in and log out, or clock in and clock out. Otherwise, if the office manager is having a million questions a day about people logging in and logging out, it's not going to make a super experience for the company. So ease of use obviously is a big design consideration. The other big design consideration is just time tracking is fundamental to job costing. I mean, it's in a service contracting business. That's your big cost item is labor, and if you're not tracking your labor in a meaningful way, you're not going to know where you're at, and seeing it at the end of the year on the P&L and being surprised one way or the other is just not the way to go about it. You need to be able to track that on a project by project basis and know where you stand. Otherwise, you're going to be lost.
I mean, I've seen, like, I can't agree with you enough on the concept of job costing. I've seen people who just start job costing and they're like, oh crap, I'm losing money on every project. I didn't know that. Or maybe their
Right,
labor is like 50, 60, 65%. And they're like, how
right,
come I'm not making any money? So then they do
right.
job costing, like, oh, that's why I need to get this under control.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really critical. I mean, and it just feeds so many critical parts of the business. If you're going to um, not to go technical, but if you have, if your team members are providing a technical service of some sort, painting, and in most cases here, you have to have some idea. Uh, you send your estimator out to say, hey, what's the price on this job going to be, but also what is our cost going to be on this? How many hours? And even if they don't get to the cost level, how many hours is it going to take to do whatever this thing is that we proposed X dollars for? If the estimator doesn't have some metrics to work with or some numbers to work with, he's just throwing a dart at the board to say, "Oh, well, this is going to take 50 hours or 20 hours or 10 hours." And I know there's a lot of estimators out there that have been doing it for years, and they can walk into something, especially on the residential side. They can walk into a residence and they can say, "That room, that's a 10-hour room. This is a 6-hour room. This is and they're probably pretty accurate because they've been doing it for so long. But if you're just getting into that type of thing, or if you're a new company, you have to build up some metrics. Otherwise, and if you ever hope to like have other people that could actually do estimates for you, you have to have a system of metrics in place for them to do it. And
Well, that's what I was gonna say on that. Like, it
yeah,
is not a scalable
yeah,
process if the secret
dude,
sauce is in your head. If you're estimating by look and feel and
yeah,
assumption,
yeah,
that's not, you can't teach someone else that.
nope, nope, not in less than 10 years.
Yeah.
That gets really expensive in terms of training costs when
So you're right, it
it
does
takes
start at
years.
estimating. So how does your estimating tool work?
So, I mean, in order to effectively estimate, you have to be able to boil things down to measuring and counting. Otherwise, it's getting back to your guesswork. And I'm not saying that there aren't some intangibles, but you got to limit the number of intangibles. If you can limit the number of intangibles or unestimatable things that require some gut rather than checking a box, you're going to be way closer to being profitable than if you don't. So having those metrics in place allows the technician to go out and basically measure and count things and observe. Observe is the gut part, and even a new estimator, you can teach them how to observe things fairly quickly. They won't be as good as you, or they may not pick up as many things, but they'll know. Oh wow, that's a 5-story building, and it's going to take you a long time to walk up and down the stairs to get your material. Little things like that, they can make notes on those, and if that gets reviewed by someone else, then they can pick up on that. But fundamentally, the services in a given area that you're working on, you can track those, and whether you do it on paper or on a computer system, it's a matter of, okay, we're going to paint the walls in this room. We're starting now. Go ahead and do it. Okay, we're all done. It took 3 hours. Now we measure, how big is this room? It's X square feet. X square feet. Yeah. And it took you X hours. You do that 10 or 20 times, and you can get a production rate from that.
So how
Basically,
does the
hey,
production rate work within Estimate Rocket?
so in Estimate Rocket, they actually build um, they build an assembly which has, and we set these all up for our customers, but basically it has any number of components, but typically for painting, there's two components. There's paint material and there's labor. And so when you create an assembly for painting walls, it's how many square feet or whatever you're counting, however you're counting, can a painter do in X time? Or how long does it take the painter to do 100 square feet? And that becomes a factor in the assembly, so they
So
know,
do you
okay, I
have
can
it
do.
has built-in production rates? Like, where did you get
Oh,
the
absolutely. Yeah,
stock production rates?
we use the PCA book in order to seed them. Over the years, they've been adjusted based on feedback from our customers.
And then as a new client gets one, they're adjustable?
Exactly. Totally adjustable. And they have to adjust them. You have to keep them honest, because one of the things that happens in production rates is if I take your production rates, some people will say, look at the room holistically and say, okay, well, there's going to be an average hour of prep in a room. Well, that might be how you do things, but this guy might do them very differently. So there are some things that affect production rates, and it's not just the brushing and rolling. It's usually those other things. It's usually setup oriented things. So you have to make sure you account for those in the way that you do things. Um, but yeah, and then the same thing with the material. How many square feet can you get out of a gallon of this?
Mhm.
Now the estimator can go in and measure the walls. Don't worry too much about windows. Just measure the walls. The PCA guide actually is even if you don't, even if your rates end up different than them, it's a great book for people who have not really done a lot of estimating, because it talks about things like, well, don't bother subtracting for the doors and the windows, because you got to work around those. So there's cutting in, there's other things that affect the production rate. So by subtracting all those from your square footage, you're actually robbing yourself, because you're forgetting about the things that you have to do to eliminate the windows when it actually comes time for painting.
Mhm.
So, and there's some other things like that, like if it's a spindle, it takes a certain amount of time to do a spindle. You don't count square feet, you count spindles, and it's
Yeah.
way higher than you would think it should be, but that's reality. So
So when you're doing an estimate, I mean, some people listening to this, might be thinking about a new software, but have
sure.
concerns about it taking a lot of time or a big
Hmm.
learning curve.
Sure.
How does that typically work? Like, what is the learning curve for learning a new estimating software like this?
Um, it should be really fast in here, but it does take some methodology in order to do it. So what we always say is get, your last three estimates that you did for people. And even though you may not have measured, let's go and, try to do some guesstimates on how many square feet that was and what the things were that you did in the room or the area or the whole project. And then plug them into one of the templates in the application, and it doesn't matter what application you're using. Just plug in the counts and measures that you had from that other project and see what it comes out for a price. And ideally, see how many hours it suggests it's going to take. Because the
That's the
other
important part
variable,
actually that most people miss is getting hours out of your production.
yeah, because that's sort of the balancing act. Like, oh, we're going to charge them $20,000. Well, that's great, but it's 3,000 hours. That's nothing. You're gonna get robbed. So that comparison is important to do, because that's kind of the balancing act where, okay, well, this application said this work that you charged X for is going to take 10 hours. How many hours did that actually take you, roughly?
Mhm.
And again, at this point, you're looking to get in the ballpark.
I just had a question actually,
Sure.
kind of jumping all over the place, but like if
It's all
you're
right.
say you do because you mentioned a big project, so you normally
Yeah.
like to rock a 50% gross margin,
Right.
right? And
Right.
then and then you have like this big commercial repaint that you want to bid at a 40% gross margin.
Right.
How do you adjust that?
Well, you have to decide what you're adjusting. So, when you're adjusting, typically to get a price that's different than your normal price, the work is going to take you the same amount of time, roughly. Again, a commercial job, a huge commercial job, new construction versus repaint is a big one, because new construction has a whole different methodology to it than repaints. But so you got to look at the type of work. But this is fun because I'm going to go off on too many tangents. Just go Time out, Tom. Get back to the
That's
back to
all
the
good.
focus.
I'm here for.
um, yeah. So the whole key is that, again, having that methodology, having the number of hours that you think it's going to take against whatever this new program came up with for hours, and say, well, the hours are the same but the price is different. Okay, great, we can just adjust the hourly labor rate to get to what you're actually charging for your labor rate. And that's usually the variable that we can't do because we don't know what you're charging per hour for your labor rate. That's the other problem with guessing, is that it's not fact based. It's If you're just coming up with that selling price number, you don't have any basis to know how long this is supposed to take people, and really take them with a certain level of productivity. And that's, I guess, the other wild card that's involved here. That's
The
the
one
other
thing
beauty of
one thing I really like doing, back to the hourly thing, is
yeah,
is taking the hours and communicating them with my team on site, because that allows me to communicate what the job's worth, how many, what the
mhm,
budget is, as we call it, for various
right,
aspects of the job, and therefore
totally,
you can use a piece rate system when you can
yeah.
communicate hours. So what does that workflow look like?
So in the when the proposals are created, if you're using the production rates, you're going to get a list of hours and you're going to get a list of materials. So you will know for the project exactly what, and even by the section or area in, what the budgeted hours are for that project. So that makes it pretty easy to, convey that information to the crew. Um, you can, and some people like to do that in a total, as they don't necessarily want to show the crew all the individual areas, how long they're supposed to take. I'm kind of a transparency believer, that the more they know, the better. But again, everybody has different views on that, and some people just want them to know, hey, I've even talked to some people who said, "Oh, I want to subtract a few hours from this budget because I don't want them to know they can use that many hours."
Mhm.
So, I'm not a big fan of that process, because what you really want to do is use it as a tool. And a lot of people are doing this now. I think is it Protiv? That's the company that's doing they're doing a bonus process where they'll give back dollars based on the budget to the crew, and they keep track of it. And it sounds like an interesting premise. But in any event, it's all based on a realistic budget. And if they beat the budget and they still get a 5-star review, then maybe they should be entitled to a little bit of that extra that they saved the company.
How I do it
So,
is, like, say it's a 100-hour budget job,
sure.
and the guys get it done in 80 hours. Well,
Yeah.
they're still gonna get paid for the full 100,
Okay. That
right?
that that makes perfect sense.
So what they do is they get you that locks your gross margin, the labor part of the
Right.
gross margin, at whatever rate you want it at, right? So you want it at
Right.
35%,
Sure.
and that 35% equates to those 100 hours. Then, yeah, if they beat on the downside, then they get a huge bonus. But if they
Right.
end up getting beat by the budget, then on that side, you need to have, like, a mutually agreed on minimum wage that you'll pay them, not like
Right.
state minimum
Sh-
wage, but
right.
whatever. So it's
Sure.
not, but then,
Right. You're not going to screw them out of their work. However, it does set the precedent for them. That sounds like a brilliant system, actually, because it sets the precedent of, okay, yeah, you're still going to get paid, but you didn't make this, and we need to figure out why you didn't accomplish this. Was it a skills thing? Did the estimator not do a good job? Because that's
yeah.
the other. Having this data makes it so easy to have conversations with the team on a project that goes the wrong way, and say, hey, what happened here? And the estimator can have their day in court and say, this is, I thought it was a
Well,
perfect
so when you
estimate.
have a breakdown like you guys make on an estimate, you can go
Right.
through line by line. Okay, after the job. All right. So the
Yeah.
upstairs bedroom, we gave you 8 hours for that. Is 8 hours reasonable
Right.
for that? Okay. For the
Right.
railing, you get 16 hours for the railing. Was that doable? Okay.
Right.
For the kitchen, we gave you this many hours. Like, okay, so it was a 100-hour budget, but you were 120. So what happened in those 20 hours? Like, where did they go?
Right.
And you can, like, go step
Right.
by step and just
Yeah.
be like, okay, it was a fair budget. You guys just
Yeah.
screwed the pooch on this one.
Right. Exactly. But the nice thing about that system is it changes it from a reprimand and you suck and you do bad work, to hey, we need to have a conversation about it and talk through what happened, and so we can help, help this not happen in the future, and in the way you're doing it, and help you get back to where you're getting paid for more hours than you're actually working.
Hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I really like that. I really like that system a lot.
So now I want to bring it back to employee hourly tracking and geotagging.
Sure.
So say you do a quote on Estimate Rocket and you get a budget of
Yep.
100 hours. Okay,
Yep.
you give it to your painters, walk them through it. Okay, they buy in, they agree to the job for 100 hours. You can do it with subs
Sure.
too. And then it comes to the start of the project. So how does an employee interface with that, and like what do they do? What does it track? What
Sure.
kind of data do you get as a manager?
Yeah, so basically, and depending upon how you pay them and how, some companies, the crews go out in a truck, in a company truck, so they basically clock in at the office and then get driven to the job. Other companies, they are responsible to arrive at the job. Um, Depending upon how you're doing it, when they get in, they get on their devices, they get a list of jobs that, what they're supposed to be doing that day comes up on their right on their dashboard, and they punch in. And when they punch in, they can optionally put in a work code of some sort that says, "Hey, we're doing interior, we're doing exterior." Work code gets really important with exterior work, especially because there's a lot of companies that they get insurance. Their insurance premiums increase based on the number of exterior hours they do versus interior hours. A risk management thing, I'm sure. But at least if you get to track it and you can report that to the insurance company that, hey, we only did X number of hours exterior, that can help with your insurance rates.
Hmm.
Um, so the work code, but again, the work code can be used for, you can get as detailed or as non-detailed as you want with the work codes in terms of how you make them report. And then when they're done or when they break for lunch, they clock out and clock back in when they're off lunch and work the rest of the day and clock out. And that all is getting tracked. That creates a situation where they're getting tracked right to the project. So all those hours are getting logged with a specific project.
So at the end of the project, you can look at the complete. Here's how many hours this guy
Yep.
worked. Here's how many
Yep.
hours this guy worked.
Yep. Each individual, you see them in total. You can see each individual. You can see it as um, all the different days that person, a given person works. So you can look at it by employee, by project, by employee, or you can look at it just as a chronological list of all the employees and a job they work. So
And
you
then
get
all
good
you do is you just
details.
take that information, put it into QuickBooks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Does it automatically go to QuickBooks or do you have to move it over?
It you do have to move the time tracking over. That's actually something that we're working on right now. Is an interface. You can, if you're using a payroll company like ADP or one of those, we have an export report that you can send to the payroll company, and they can bring that in and create the hours for the week with them. QuickBooks doesn't make it quite that easy, but we're working on an integration to time tracking.
Okay. And then, I mean, ideally, you have a bookkeeper doing that for you so you can give your
Yeah.
bookkeeper a different type of user access.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, the bookkeeper can go in and to a screen where she can see all of the hours for the week, all of the people that have worked, and go in and edit. Make edits where they have to. Somebody forgets to clock out, or somebody never clocked in. They can go making all those adjustments to get the hours straightened out.
Okay. Cool. I mean, so that sounds like there's a lot that went into that feature. Like, how
Quite a
was
bit.
the development process for creating geotags and sharing job details? What was that all
The
like?
the geotagging thing was kind of cool because we actually crossed that hurdle when we originally created the product because we put in mapping. So every customer gets geocoded based on their address when they get put into the system. So we already know where what the coordinates of that address are when they create the customer. And then the that made it really easy because when the person clocks in, we geotag where they are, and then it compares that to the address that's for the job site, and it tracks the variance between, if they're within, I think it's a half a mile of the site, it'll gives them a green tag, and if they're more than a half mile from the site, it gives them a red tag, so they can
Can you
easily
set up
say.
notifications for the owner, like when an employee clocks in, or you just have to go manually check?
You have to go manually check, but there's actually one screen, the hour screen, that'll show you like green and red for all the people that are punched in and punched out, so they
Okay.
can just scan down the list and see who's punched in and not at any time.
Yeah. Okay. If it's like 8:02, you can just go see who's punched in.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That's a good point.
I mean, I don't think anyone needs that notification. I could see you wanting that maybe, but like it's not a little, a little overbearing, I think.
Yeah, notifications are in general are an interesting beast because one too many and nobody looks at them anymore, and not enough obviously is the opposite problem, but we try not to err on the side of too many notifications because there's enough notifications that are legit that adding any that would be good for the first week, and then you go,
Yeah.
oh man, how do we turn that off?
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Or maybe for the person who's just hiring their first painters.
Right, right.
So, so we talked about, geotagging, tracking employees, making sure, they're being accountable. That gives them the
Sure.
hours, estimating, production rates. How do you feel like this all works together? Like, what are some of the turnaround stories that you've seen from some clients who went from not having any of this to implementing these systems in their companies?
I think in general, probably one of the best outcomes is the ability to review when the job is complete, being able to, and this is again residential where the jobs aren't 8 months or 12 months. That's sort of a different animal. Um, Being able to quickly sit down with the team out when the week after a project is closed or the day after a project is closed and have a conversation about it and already have highlighted the projects that may be a problem, so you don't have to look at them all, but you get little red bars on the report when there's a project there's a variance between estimate and actual by more than like 5%.
Hmm.
So I think that conversation, because it becomes, when you have it quick like that, it becomes a much more productive and positive conversation between the people involved. Again, it's not like you know, you suck. You did 20 projects in the last 3 months, and we lost money on every one. It becomes a, hey, this you're a little bit off on that project. Anything go wrong? Was it just the weather or what? And you get to have a positive conversation. It and it instantly lets the people know that they're doing good or bad. Like, oh shit, I was over on that one. What was it? And if nothing else, it alerts them to the idea that, hey, we're looking at this because it's important to the company. For the company to be able to pay you, we have to make a certain amount of money. We have to make more than we're paying you, otherwise we can't pay you. It's the formula is not that complicated. So I think that's the biggest one. I think the other thing is you get the early warning system. So during the progress of a project, you can see there's another progress report that shows you again where are you from an hours and a total cost standpoint, midway through the project versus where you thought you should be. What you budgeted for the project and how close to the duration you are.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
mean, well, you just about said about how we describe that as like, is it a skill issue or is it a commitment issue?
right,
Right? Like
right,
skill,
yeah.
okay, we can work on that and like figure that out. But if it's like a commitment thing,
Right,
you're just like not really bought in, not doing your part.
right, yeah, but it highlights those, and the sooner you know those, the better. I mean, you avoid having your whole team get poisoned by someone who's just not committed and not really interested in doing the work, and that really can destroy a lot in a good team
Yeah. And I
quickly.
mean, the other part
Yeah,
of it too is the professionalism, right? If you're that
right,
organized and you have your stuff together and you're
right,
tracking hours and you got geotagging and you're sharing jobs and communicating
right.
all of this stuff, like your employees are going to take your opportunity a lot more seriously than the person who doesn't have any of that.
Absolutely. And again, you're going to win. You're going to be winning more and actually paying your people more because you're making more and you're able to do that and they're able to
Mhm.
pay them well, not constantly scraping to make payroll.
Yeah.
So I think a big part of it is the early warning, the ability to see things before it's too late,
Yeah.
while they're
It's
still
like
actionable.
not waiting until the end of the year to figure out how much you're going to pay in taxes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I was an accountant before I started writing software years ago, and so I have that accounting fundamental. So virtually everything I've ever written has some sort of, is tied to accounting at the end of the day. So it's really important to have that integrity in in your system that is tracking not only the minutia and the details, but it's also tracking the numbers that go with those details, so you can have accountability in your system.
Yeah. Accountability, no pun intended.
Yeah.
I would say,
Well, maybe.
as tradespeople, we're usually a little bit less numbers oriented, a little more action
Right,
oriented, like get her done kind of thing at all costs.
right,
Where tradespeople, especially tradespeople, ex entrepreneurs, it's like that perfect storm of like, okay, big picture focused, right? Let's just get it done.
right.
We
Yeah,
need more numbers people in our corners to because
yeah,
that's like how you transition from being a painter to being
right,
like a significant business owner is understanding of those fundamental numbers, seeing
right,
them, and then using them to make decisions.
right. And at the end of the day, they're not that complicated. Once you take the time to look at them, there's as I someone once said, when I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to school for accounting," and they said, "Oh, you must be really good with math," and I said, "No, and to be an accountant, you need to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. That's it. There's no calculus. There's not. Well, maybe there is in some types, forensic accounting or something. There may be, but in basic accounting, like you need to run a business, there's not a lot of complicated math. There is some knowing how things go together. Revenues up here, your costs are here, and at the bottom, that needs to be a positive number that is the difference between your costs and your revenues. And
Mm.
it's really interesting. We did a I think it was at Tom Reaver's event. We did we created this spreadsheet that was just a simple, like, plug in some of your top numbers, and it just does some simple calculation. You put in how many people you have, what you charge per hour, what your average cost is per hour, and then it shows you what your revenue potential is, and it uses what's your material percentage, 23, adds calculates what your revenue potential is from your materials based on those averages, and it just quickly shows you. But then it's got a second set of columns, and you can, put different numbers in there, like change your hourly rate. Holy shit, look what that does to my revenue potential. Or add some people. Oh, look what that does to my revenue. The thing that I hadn't thought that much about was I had an overhead section at the bottom. And I didn't usually talk too much about that, but someone came up after the presentation and said, I just realized my overhead is way too high. So I gotta either radically increase my sales or I gotta cut some overhead. And I thought that was pretty fascinating because he was like, when he went through the numbers at the top, he was right on the mark. He had his 50% margin, going in gross, and he was all good. And then you got to the bottom, you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
no fun.
I mean,
So
yeah, it's exactly like I have a couple clients who just came on, and one of the first things that we do with our clients is help them with their profit and loss statements.
yeah,
First of all, understand what that is, and then
sure.
see maybe their first ever profit and loss statement for their business.
Right.
And if you don't track that, like it can be
Yeah,
very disappointing for your business.
sure.
Like I think one guy was like, "Yeah, I looked at my P&L from last year. P&L is profit and loss,"
Yeah,
and and then he's like, "I didn't like after my salary, the business didn't make any money."
right.
Because people also like this is completely different than our topic today, but like,
Sure.
and if you're listening to this and this is you, then you need to not do this. But they use their business bank account as like a personal piggy bank, take out
Hmm.
money when the balance is kind of high and take out less money when the balance is lower, and gauge their business's health and how much money they have based on their current balance in their bank account.
Right.
And that doesn't take into consideration your accounts receivable, your accounts
Right.
payable, what type of bills you coming up, who you have to pay,
Yeah.
what's coming in, what's going out. That just is a current number in time, means nothing for how successful your business is.
Right. And it fluctuates all over the place. I mean, that's hard. I think that's a hard concept to get through to people, is that your cash balance at any given time has nothing to do with your business profitability.
Yeah.
or may have nothing to do. Obviously,
Not a lot.
sometimes it's in sync, but not very
You
often.
use the balance sheet. So look at your balance sheet to see how
Right,
much money you have, and then you should be
right.
looking at your profit and loss statement at least once a month.
Yeah,
Have your bookkeeper put that together.
yeah.
And
That's a key.
ideally, you want to see your cash flow statement, and you want that to be a positive number every month. That's an important one.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not an accountant, but those are the 3 things that I do every month.
and again, they're not that complicated to get your hands on. I mean, a P&L, and if you're not doing or having someone, keep your books for you on a monthly basis, you're throwing money away.
Well, also, like, even like not even just having a PL, but having an accurate P&L. Like,
Right.
I used to have like an inaccurate P&L, and it would like tell me some numbers, but they weren't the right numbers.
They made you feel good, but they were not really
Yeah,
getting you
yeah.
anywhere.
Like, oh, you forgot to add this one credit card in that, in a different bank that we got to get in there. So
Yeah,
yeah, finances is so important.
they really are.
Understanding numbers, and I mean, understanding
Yep.
so many numbers as a business owner, right? You're not a painter anymore.
Yeah,
You're a business owner, and you got to treat it as such.
right. Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, honing in on the important numbers, there aren't that many once you hone in on their sales. There's gross profit. That's tricky because people don't think of it that way. They just think of the bottom line. Then there's net profit, and then there's cash. I mean, those are the ones to me that if you don't know those at almost any given moment, it's a potential recipe for disaster.
Hmm.
So,
So what can you offer our listeners here in order to get them, nudge them over the line to get them to test out Estimate Rocket? What's the
well,
deal of the day?
the deal of the day is we offer a 30-day free trial, but we will offer people listening to the podcast two additional free months.
Wow.
Yeah,
3 months
60
free.
days.
And
Yeah,
you got to listen to the end to get it. So
got to listen to the end to get it. Yeah, beautiful.
that's huge. Very generous, Tom. I mean, if someone uses Estimate Rocket for 3 months and dials in everything that we've
Right.
talked about so far,
Yeah,
even a few of the things, like it will pay for itself tenfold.
easily.
Yeah, not hundredfold.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on today. I think that was a conversation that we really needed to have, and I hope
Yeah,
everyone listening got a lot of value out of it.
me too. It's near and dear to my heart in many ways. So it's really important.
Well, we run our businesses to make profit. And if we don't know how much profit we're making, if we can't track that and know the leading metrics and lagging metrics around that, what
Right.
are we doing? We're volunteering.
Yep.
We don't a job.
And we're not feeding our families on volunteer work.
Exactly. Sweet, Tom. Well, thanks for coming on again, man. Looking forward to our next chat.
Awesome. Me too.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.